copywriting is the bridge between the customer where they are now and your solution, and where that solution should be aligned with what that customer wants, what they desire. So if we can be that bridge, then the copywriting works. But that requires you to align to the customer. And using the analogy that I've used, here's what I mean by aligning to the customer. Say, for example, there are 10 potential crossing points of this river, and the customer can see those 10 potential crossing points. And let's say that they are at crossing point 5. Don't go building your bridge at crossing point 2, because that requires them to move to crossing point 2, which requires you to change the way they think before they even start considering your solution. We should be changing the way they think whilst considering your solution, whilst talking about the problem that they have. And the problem is that crossing point number 2 is most likely a different problem to the crossing point number 5, which is where they are right now. So they're not necessarily ready to go to that crossing point. What we want to do is we want to make it as easy as possible. We are lazy human beings. We just are. We have to admit that. We're really lazy. We don't want to do any work, especially if we're handing our money over to somebody for a product or for a service. We want that to be full service, done for me. There it is. I've paid you. Now I should be getting the results that you're promising. So if that's the case and we're lazy, don't make your customer work for it. And that's what copywriting does, is it meets the client, or meets the lead, prospect, whatever you want to call it, where they're at. So we've got to really get into their head and understand what they're thinking right now. And this is another phrase that you learn when you learn copywriting, is to join the conversation they're having.
Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube, and after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share, if we've earned it. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable From the Trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined again. Bob Taylor's here.
Hello, everybody. You brought me on for a second part.
The second part, part 2. We actually just had an episode with Bob like a week or two ago, a couple weeks ago. It wasn't that long. And the reason why we're talking again is because at the end of that episode, we're like, we didn't even dig into the juicy copywriting stuff. Because Bob has such an incredible story. There were so many lessons and things we could talk about there. Like, his journey is littered with lessons. So if you want to learn about Bob's story, his journey, from sales to copywriting and starting a business and all that kind of thing, go to the last episode, which I won't remember the episode number right now. Should I look up the episode number?
Go for it, Matt.
Bob, talk for a minute while I look up the episode number. It is 185. Yeah, so go to number 185. You can learn all about Bob, and we're going to pick up where we left off.
Yes.
And talk about rocks. We were actually, before we started recording this, we thought we should have, Bob's like, we should have be recording because this is a great lesson. We were talking about something random, being thirsty. And I said, I learned on YouTube that you could put a rock in your mouth and it activates your saliva. And so if you're like in the middle of the woods or something, it was a survival lesson or something. You could put a rock in your mouth and you won't be thirsty anymore. So we'll start with that lesson.
The lesson to learn here is, if someone tells you that they're thirsty, tell them to go suck a rock. That's simple as that.
Exactly. There you go. You didn't. That's a surprise, bonus lesson for today. Anyway, so let's get into copywriting. I actually don't know if that's true or not. I might try it someday if I'm out in the woods and I get thirsty. And I'll report back.
Looking forward to it, Matt.
Anyway, so actually, let's start with this, Bob, though, even though we know your entire story, but let us know first what you do and kind of how you became a copywriter, maybe encapsulated into like a 2-minute dialogue.
Yeah, we'll take the 50-minute episode that was 185 and we'll turn it into 2 minutes here. So yeah, I started out I started out in sales, and that is important to understand in copywriting, because that is the essence of copywriting. If you don't know what copywriting is, if you're kind of new to that phrase, then think of it as selling with words, selling with the written word. So when you've been, if you walk into a store or into a shop or something, or a car sales place, and they begin to talk to you and they start saying things, that's all sales. I think they call it sales patter. But copywriting is very, very similar. It's just in the written form. So it's online, or it's on paper, or what it is. But what you've got to remember is that copywriting's chief goal is conversion. So whether that's making a sale or making somebody on the website convert into a lead and a prospect, bringing people along the funnel, that's what copywriting is. So understanding that it all comes from the thought process of sales, of conversions. That's really important to remember with copywriting. I think I went off a little bit, but I mean, I think that's what you asked.
No, we defined the basics of copywriting, and that's why. And that's but you started with sales. Mm-hmm. You learned, you were in the insurance business for like a decade, like someone else here on the podcast, and you learned a lot about sales, and that translated. But you always loved words.
Yes,
and that translated to you. Like at one point, you made a pivot in your career. You decided, I'm going to go out on my own and try this freelance thing and do copywriting.
Exactly.
And here we are. So I helped you finish that off.
Thank you, yeah. But if you go back and listen to 185, awesome. You'll get all that in a lot more detail.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. So, okay, well, so one of the things that actually we have, talked about discussing, and I think it's something, I want to kind of gear this episode towards somebody that maybe doesn't really know what copywriting is. They've heard of copywriting. They know there's copywriters out there. They don't have any clue why they'd want one, or when they should want one, or what the benefits of having one is. And that's what I really want to dig into. But one of the things that really struck me that Bob kind of said to me at one point is like, we talk about the difference between what a copywriter is and somebody that creates content. Because I think you could think those two things are kind of the same thing. But there's a stark difference between the two. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, I can. Yeah, there is a big difference, and the big difference is what I just said. It is that focus on selling. So let's go back to what you said a second ago about why would you want a copywriter. Think about why you'd want. If somebody said to you, why would you want a content writer? I think you probably know the answer. Oh, they can get my social media posts done. They can get this. They can write me some blog posts. They can get this done for me. But the reason you'd hire a copywriter, you could hire them to do the exact same things. You could hire a copywriter to write your social media posts. You could hire a copywriter to write your blog posts. So let's take a look at that for a second. Let's take a look at the blog post as an example. Why would you hire a content writer to write a blog post, and why would you hire a copywriter to write you a blog post? The main difference really is the content writer is going to write beautiful content for you that is about educating, and it is about informing, and is about making sure you hit those SEO goals that you have to bring traffic to your website. But it isn't necessarily going to convert, because that's not the way a content writer necessarily thinks. The way they're thinking is, I need to get the content out. Whereas a copywriter will do the same thing. They'll get the content, but the entire process will be around, okay, where's this lead at before they come to read this? Where's the reader at before they land on this blog post? And where do we want them to be by the time they've finished reading the blog post? So you'll find that copywritten blog posts tend to have some form of action at the end of that blog post or during the blog post to get you to take some form of action, to go somewhere, to enter a funnel, to give your email address over, to do whatever it might be. Whereas a purely written content piece will just be to inform and educate, and both have their place. Neither one is better than the other, but absolutely both have their place. It just depends on your goals. What are the goals that you're actually trying to achieve with the blog post? What are your goals that you're trying to achieve with social media? If all you're doing on social media is just raising awareness, you may not necessarily need to pay the extra you might pay for a copywriter just to kind of get content out there and grow some sort of base. But when you have that base and they're not converting and you're getting frustrated because no one's clicking through to go to your offers, no one's clicking through to go here, well, that's where we might want to get a copywriter on so that they can help you understand. And it's all about understanding the customer. Where's the customer at when they're reading this social post, and how do we create a strategy so that we can get them through your social media posting to take the action that you want them to take. So it's all about bringing the customer along the journey, whereas content is really, it's not, I'm going to say just, but it isn't just anything. It's just less than copywriting, I guess. It's just getting content out there. It's just raising that awareness, not necessarily action-oriented writing.
So what I'm hearing is basically a copywriter is hired, or their work is to understand the audience, understand who's reading what, or who's on that page, or whether it's a landing page or sales page or whatever, and understanding that and how to construct it in a way that guides them towards some kind of action, like I said, within the content or at the end of that content. So a call to action or whatever, CTAs as we call them.
Yes.
Would you have a content writer? Are we just calling them content writers? We'll just content writer is their bread and butter. You wouldn't have a content writer do a sales page. No, a sales page is definitely the wheelhouse of a copywriter, right? And a sales page that's where it depends on if you're doing direct marketing or what kind of, what you're selling. But a sales page is essentially, if you're selling a product, it's going to guide, it's literally, that's the whole experience, right? It's getting somebody to read something. They see testimonials, they got bonuses, and by the time they get to that box at the bottom, they're ready to click it and buy something. But you wouldn't have just a content writer doing that, because that has very little to do with SEO. It's probably traffic's driving from some list or something like that. And you want somebody that's really good at selling with words.
That is a really interesting point you make, actually, because I have been hired in the past to write a sales page and been told I need to focus on SEO. And there is a difficulty in that, because when you focus on the SEO, it does pull away from some of the tactics, some of the persuasion tactics that we use in copywriting. And here's another thing to think about from a copywriting perspective. A content writer will give you words, so many words, well-written words, but they'll give you so many words. A copywriter will look at those words and go, why are we using so many words to explain that? And they will cut it down to the smallest form of getting the same point across in the most succinct way possible. And content writers can do this too. But generally, when we talk about content, we're thinking much bigger. But when we're talking about kind of copywriting, we are trying to get that message across as quickly and as succinctly and as clearly as we possibly can, so that we can start persuading, start using those sales techniques that, if you've ever been in sales, you know what they are, how to take a customer along the steps of the journey that they need to take to be ready to buy. And that's not necessarily something that a content writer would do, just kind of putting a lot of words out there. Now that's really, really great, because when you've got lots of words, it's really, really, really easy to hide those keywords. Use them a lot. Bump up that SEO. But it's very, very difficult to write a sales page that's also SEO optimized. It's possible. It can be done, absolutely. But you're going to need a long form sales page. But it's kind of more difficult, because it almost becomes like that's the secondary. The primary focus is the sales, but the SEO becomes the secondary focus. And one of the first things that you learn in copywriting is it's called the one big idea. And the one big idea is, when you get someone to read copy, you want them to think one thing, you want to talk about one thing, and you want them to do one thing, right? The second you start trying to do more than one thing, it convolutes the message and the reader feels it. and then they don't do that one thing that you ask them to do. And here's an example as well. You mentioned sales pages. Absolutely, copywriting is the place to go for sales pages. But what about web copy? Can a content writer write web copy compared to a copywriter? Who's best to do that job? And honestly, the answer to that question is, again, it depends on what your goal is. I've had clients come to me for web copy telling me that they're not getting any conversions on their website. No one's doing anything. I go to their existing website and it's so blatantly obvious why it's not doing anything. And to me, it's because this has either been written by the person themselves, or it's been written by a content writer, somebody who doesn't necessarily understand the intricacies of selling and converting. Because when you go onto that website, you go onto that homepage, they're confused as to why they're not converting people into subscribers when their subscription box is in their footer. The actual homepage copy doesn't have any action at all. There's no action for them to take, which means that the readers of this page don't actually know where you want them to go next. And that's something important. We don't know when we're doing this. It's all happening in the subconscious. We don't know that we want to be guided through a process.
Yeah.
So if I read your homepage, where do you want me to go next? You tell me. I'm not just going to pick. Unless I'm already interested, unless there's already a reason that I'm going. For example, Matt, I know that you went and looked at my website before we did that first interview. You had a reason to be there. You wanted to see, what services I offer, what I'm doing. But you're not my ideal client. You're not going to buy from me for that purpose, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need to go through the guided process of what a website copy would do, because you're just exploring. However, when we want to make our websites actually convert and do something, we need to make sure that we're focusing on an action, and one action. Now, you can break this down into two ways. I'm doing a little bit of a masterclass here, but that's okay. It's cool. Break this down into two ways. One way is one action per page, and the other way is to make your entire website 100% one action. And that can be really, really, really effective when every single call to action on your website is to do something. For example, if your main goal in your business is to increase your subscription list, to get more people on your email list, well then if that's your main goal, that should be what your website's doing. When people land on your website, it shouldn't be check out my services, it shouldn't be contact me here, it should be join my subscription list because this is what you're going to get. Benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. Join this, it's free. Join this and I'll give you this for free. Lots of different ways of saying the same thing, but it's that one action that we want them to take. And when they go and visit our website, they go to the homepage, they see join my email list. They go to the about page, they see join my email list. They go and read a blog post, they see join my email list. They go to the services page, they see join my email list. They're being told over and over again, and if you know anything about sales, there's that touch point system. You have to have, I think, it changes all the time, but I think the last thing I read on it was 8 to 12 touch points before someone's actually going to take any form of action with you. Generally, on average. So if it takes 8 touch points, then you want to be talking about it on social media too. So if they're following you, your call to action at the end of your social media post should be join my email list. If you make videos, join my email list. If you make podcasts like this, end your podcast episode with join my email list so that you get updated when the next episode comes out. Get them to hear it everywhere, because then they're going to get all those touch points and they're going to take the action eventually. Not many people take the action the first time they're asked. Some do, but not many people do. The majority of people are going to take it much later on. So that's kind of the purpose of if you ever hear me talk about CTA strategy, that's what I just discussed with you right now is CTA strategy. It's deciding on what do we want people to do and what's the one big idea, what's that one thing that we want them to take. And we can change that call to action later. If that lead list is growing and you've got other forms of it growing organically now and traffic's flowing into the right blog posts that do that job for you, then we can change the website copy call to action area to be something different. And it's very, very simple to do that without doing an entire overhaul of your website. So that's the difference again between a content writer and a copywriter. You're going to get that strategy behind it. You're going to get that understanding of what it is that you want people to actually do on your website. And a lot of the customers that come to me for web copy haven't even thought about that. And that's the thing. So right now, if you're listening to this, this is your chance to open your mind to this idea. Your website should be a conversion machine. It should be something that converts. You just have to decide what that conversion is, because a subscribe link in the footer of your website is not going to convert anybody. It's not going to do what you think it does. And as proof of that right now, ask yourself, when have you ever clicked a subscribe link in a footer just for the fun of it? When have you ever given your email address over just because it's there? You don't, right? So why do some people expect that to happen when the people are on their website? So just think about that and think about what it is that you want your website to do. Some websites are built just to inform, not necessarily to convert, and content writers can do that very, very well. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to make very, very clear, when I talk about copywriting versus content writing, I'm never saying one is better than the other, because each has its place and each has its purpose. So one thing is one thing and one thing is the other. But generally, a copywriter can do content, but they're going to find it very difficult to do content without thinking of the action. That's the thing. Whereas a content writer may not. But they may not have the skill set to help you on that sales side.
Gosh, my brain is popping with things I want to talk about. So that's a great explanation, though. That's really important, and I love that you emphasize that there is room for both, and there's a reason to have both. And I think of content is when we're creating content, whether it's for blogs or whatever, or social media, whatever. It has sometimes that's just to get eyeballs, and sometimes it's for SEO to get traffic and things like that. That's where we start. But then going through it now, is this a common route where someone would start with a content writer and then have a copywriter backfill and come back through and then update the site for conversions? Is that because you might, maybe you write your own copy. Maybe there's some reason you want to just get it done, get it launched or whatever, and then you want to fine tune it and have somebody with that conversion eye to come through and handle it.
Exactly, you got it right. I would say that in the 4.5 years I've been doing this, the web copy clients that I've had where I've actually worked on web copy, probably 80% have existing copy. This isn't something that they're coming to me for brand new. There is an existing form and they want it updated. And I would say that yes, most likely they have either written the copy themselves because they had no budget, or their budget was small. Because generally a content writer is going to charge less than a copywriter will. And the way you got to think about that is it's two different skill sets. And it's the value that you get from them. A copywriter is going to help you make more sales. That's higher value than just getting eyeballs on a page, right? So that's why you might start just by hiring a content writer to write your web copy. But as you said, it's not necessarily conversion focused. It's not really necessarily going to be doing its job. So the majority of the clients I get for website copy are people coming to me and saying, my website's not converting. I've got a 80% bounce rate. Can you help fix it? I was like, yeah, I can, because I know what to do to help you fix those things. I can go on your website and I can take a look and I can see why your bounce rate is so high, because your hero section's terrible. It doesn't get anybody to want to carry on reading down. So they're landing and they're going, nah. But then here's a little secret I'll put out there, because a lot of people get really frustrated about this. You can have the most beautifully written, copywritten page. That hero section can be beautiful on your homepage and it can say exactly what you want it to say. But you have to think about the customer journey, the customer's experience. What were they reading right before they clicked on that link? It's very unlikely, it's possible, but it's very unlikely that they just typed in your name or just typed in your www.url.com and landed on your website. If they did that, it's going to do, a copywritten page is going to do what it's supposed to do. But if your hero section talks about problem B on your list of problems that your customer might have at the top, and right now your social media campaign is focused on problem A, and they've clicked on a social media post to learn more, but they see a different problem, there's this disconnect. There's this kind of, no, I've got this problem, not that problem. So this is rubbish to me. That could be your bounce rate, but it could be the most beautifully written, copywritten page ever. But that's why it's important. You go to any website, pick a big corporate brand website, whatever, and look at their hero section. Go back in a month or two. Guarantee it's changed. and it changes with their marketing campaigns. And it's because whatever they're focusing on with their campaigning will require not the whole page, but that hero section needs to focus on whatever it is that you're focusing on. Now I can hear people asking me, but I don't want to change my homepage all the time. That's great. Don't change your homepage. If your homepage is doing what it's supposed to be doing, if it's converting well, if your bounce rate's good, then don't necessarily change it with the marketing campaigns that you're doing. Because what you can do instead is create a landing page for those people. If you're talking about problem A and your homepage talks about problem B, create a landing page that talks about problem A first. Then lead them down to problem B, then they can go to your website and take a look at everything. So I just fell in front of my camera, sorry.
Yeah. What was that?
It was a sticker came up. It just rolled over my camera. I disappeared for a second, but it's okay.
All good. If you're on video, you'll understand. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So it's not just taking a look at... One of the first questions I ask when someone comes to me and they say, I've got a terrible bounce rate, can you help me fix it? Is where's your traffic coming from? Where is your traffic coming from? What are they clicking on to come to you?
Yeah.
And let me see that copy.
I mean,
let me see the ad. Let me see whatever it is.
This is right. So this is something that's really, really critical to understand. And I think this is something I learned over the couple decades I've been online, is, and especially when it came to advertising and keywords and all the stuff we do to drive traffic to a web page or a landing page, is that it's not about necessarily only what's on that page. It's the source of the traffic. And that can be the list as well. There was many promotions I did years ago, and where people would promote my website or whatever, or what I was selling, like my product or whatever. And there was some lists that I would do webinar for or whatever, and that converted like gangbusters. There was a connection. But I would drive drive somebody else's list to that same offer and not get any conversions. It happened maybe once or twice. It's fascinating. And it's the same with keywords, like a certain keyword, variations of keywords can drive different flavors of traffic to a web page, and some convert and some don't. So it's that balance, right? It's like you have to be thinking from a copywriting perspective, not only about the copy and constructing copy that's going to pull somebody through that buying experience to buy something, but it's also thinking about who's seeing that page or what the audience is, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And not to throw even more confusion in here, but if you've ever heard of the buyer awareness scale, we won't go into that into detail today, but buyer awareness plays a massive role as well. You've got the source of the traffic, but how aware are they of you, your product, the solution? Do they even know they have a problem? Those sorts of things. We have to know that before we can start copywriting. Who is the audience that's landing here? Because that's probably what the disconnect was when you were trying to sell somebody else's list. Maybe you were selling to somebody who did know about the problem. They knew that there was a solution, but they didn't know yours was the solution. You taught them that yours was the solution. You took them through the next few stages and you made the sale. Perfect. But when you went to this other person's list, maybe they didn't even know they had a problem. So you were going to somebody with a solution they didn't even know they had a problem to. And there's a disconnect and it doesn't work because actually you need to pull that marketing strategy back a little bit and first educate on the problem for them to have that aha moment and go, oh, I do have this problem. Okay, what's the solution? And is there a solution? Yes, there's a solution. What's the solution? Here's the solution. Who can give me that solution? I can give you that solution, right? It's that buyer awareness that we need to pay a lot of attention to. And that plays a big role in bounce rate, in conversion of a website. And as you say, the source of the kind of the source of your traffic, those leads coming in, it really does depend who they are. So if you're going to sell to another list, it might be kind of worth trying to do. It's not necessarily easy, but trying to do a little bit of research from the person whose list that is, as to where they are. What do they talk about? Maybe join that person's list before you start actually selling to that list so that you can see the content that they put out there. And then kind of piggyback on the back of it and change and that again could require building a landing page, which is that middle ground between you talking to them, they land on the landing page, then they go to the sales page, right? Sometimes you need that little middle ground to get them to take that step towards where you actually want them to be.
Right. Some people are more ready to buy, or some people have to. Yeah. We could get even deeper. So, and one of the other things you're talking about too, though, is from a copywriting perspective, I'm going to share kind of my recent experience I've had on one of my websites, or a couple of my websites actually. But one of the things that is clear is, okay, you have sales pages where you're, it's like a direct maybe letter or whatever that's going to drive somebody to take an action immediately without going anywhere else. But you also have your internal pages, your pages that are going to speak to specific services you have. Or if you're an e-commerce site, it's a product page. But on every single one of those, like every page that I have, and this excludes my blog a little bit, but at the moment, but even there, that's changing. But there's that having a reason or a route or a purpose for that page, an action, I think you might have called it, that one action or a couple actions, but it should be very focused. One action for that page or for the whole site, for the whole experience. That is something that that's really worked well for my agency, right? UnifiedWebDesign.com. If you go there, we actually just went through, or Matt went through a conversion update. And I took that same process. So over the years, now that I've had that same website for almost 6 years, but in the beginning, it was just get some content there. Now I have a little bit of copywriting. I'd studied copywriting a little bit in the past. So I write pretty much anything you see is written by Matt. But in the beginning, it was just getting content up and getting pages. These is my service. I probably use some techniques in there or whatever. But something in recent, especially this last year, I had a client who, I've been working with him for like 3 years, but he's been learning too and applying some things that he's learning along the way. And one of the things he did, was, we have like buttons, throughout his website. He sells product. It's basically an e-commerce site. It's just a handful of products. And but as you go through any page, you know what the action is. It's shop now. But it's not just shop now. It's start your experience. The button might say something different in different places, but they're going to the same place. It's whatever the context is. We mix it up. And I did something very, very similar to Unified Web Design. If you go there now, I always had a call to action, right? That was one of my phases, trying to figure out what that call to action was. For a little while, I was trying to build a list. Wasn't really working for me. I think in the beginning, I was having somebody download my pricing guide because another agency or something I'd learned from, it was a course I took. They said, do that, have a button to download your pricing guide. And then I thought it's just all my competitors finding out what my pricing is. That's all the people that are downloading this thing. But so I went through different phases, and then I went to a Calendly link to this specific schedule right now. It's a little pop-up right there. They don't go anywhere. They schedule a call right there. That's worked really well for me. But I did another round where I also kind of used the same technique my client was using, where I now throughout, you will see other calls, other buttons throughout a page, 2, 3, 4, whatever, in sections where it seemed to make sense. And so I'm looking at my homepage right now. The hero is schedule a call today. That's going to have a pop-up. Then I have below that, there's a section where it says start your project. That takes them to a form that I have. So there's 2 things I'm doing in mine. Here's one that says begin your journey. And then at the bottom, there's a request a free quote. Some of these are going to the same form. But on my site, I have basically two actions. It's anywhere it says schedule a call today, it's schedule a call today. It's going to do a Calendly thing and they can get on my calendar. Otherwise, it's get a quote, basically. But I did that. And I also, you could speak to this a little bit, I also changed the color of these buttons. For the longest time, I did something I would never have done for a client. And I had all my buttons were the same color using basically pickup brand colors. And I recently updated them. This was an effort between myself and my designer to find the perfect color that didn't clash and it just felt better. We went with like this, and then she ended up with this gradient that went yellow to orange. And I thought that's perfect. That looks good, I think, but it pops. And I'm going to send this back to you, Bob. This is one of the things that I think is critical. And even when we're designing, because we design websites as well, when we're designing a website and we understand the call to action, what the action they want to be taken, which should be, like you said, one or two actions, one preferably, is that the call to action is obvious. It stands out from the rest of the website. And I had actually an agency partner that said this, and it stuck with me for a couple of years now. He's like, one of his sayings was like, if everything's important, nothing's important. Right. And he was just like, what he was trying to do with one of the clients we were working with him was to train the visitor that this color, this type of button is the one I want you to, doesn't matter where you are on my website, what part of the buying cycle we're in. When you see this is the action I want you to take. Can you speak to that a little bit about maybe the psychology behind that and your thoughts around making a strong call to action that's hard to ignore?
There is absolutely, I'm no expert in color psychology. However, I have learned a little bit about it, and there is a lot that can be said about the choice of colors that you use on your website. But to somebody who's not got that design eye, they will pick a color, and then you'll notice, you can see this when you go to a website, that everything's that color. So let's just say they chose blue, which in color psychology means trust. Right, that's the biggest one. If you see blue, you think trust. So they pick blue. Their menu bar is blue. The pictures that they've chosen are blue. Their background sections are blue. But in the white sections, they'll put a blue button. And what happens there is it all kind of just blends together. And you don't see what you're supposed to see. The eye is, I mean, you understand design probably better than I do. But I would have thought. So, but it's all about, where do we want the eye to go next? And there's something to be said about copywriting there as well. Where our eyes look on the page, you've got that Z pattern that we can get people to look at. We've got the F pattern that we can get people to look at. We have lots of different other patterns that haven't come to my head right now because I think they're the two main ones. But where do we want the eyes to travel, and what are they looking at? And it's not necessarily just the color, but it's also the position of the button. Where are you putting that button? It really depends on where the rest of your where the rest of your copy is. And I can give a personal example of this, actually. I needed to fill, I don't remember the website that I was on, but I needed to fill in a contact form to initiate an inquiry. And I put in my name, put in the rest of the information, order number probably or something, and then the little comment box, I filled it in. And I was like, where's the send button? How do we send this form? And I was like, what is going on? Now think about a form, it's all aligned on the left, your name. They'd put the submit button on the right. Now I've got a big Mac. Yeah, a big Mac. And it's a big screen. My eye just didn't look at the button, it just didn't see it. And I was thinking, I looked at it, it probably wasn't 30 seconds. It was probably much less than that, but it felt like ages. But I was like, where is this submit button? I can't find, oh, there it is. And if you think about that on the contact form, but if you're doing the same sort of thing on a page that you want people to take action on, they ain't going to be searching for the button. They're just going to skip over it. I was searching for the button because I needed to inquire. But on a standard page, I'm not going to be searching for the button. So the position is important, but absolutely, I think the rule in design, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have some primary colors, secondary colors, and then you have an accent color or colors. You can have multiple accent colors, I think.
Tertiary. The tertiary color.
Oh, is it called tertiary?
The primary,
colors?
secondary, tertiary. But it's basically accent. That's how we approach it. Yeah, sorry. I'm tripping
and
you up.
It's supposed to be like, yeah. It's supposed to be something like, I don't know, 60% primary color, 30% secondary color, and then 10% the accent color. Because as that person you worked with before, training somebody to look at this color and see it as the action, well, is your website more than 10% action? Probably not, right? Because you're saying a lot more before you're asking them to take the action. So that makes sense in line with the kind of the design ideology there of having this primary, secondary, tertiary color. The tertiary color that you have, or the accent color, whatever you want to call it, should be the color that you're choosing for your call to action. And therefore it should be, and that's why I think I call it the accent color, is because it accents, it jumps off the screen. If you're on the video version right now, look at my screen. You can see that my background's white, I've got plants everywhere, so you've got green, and I'm wearing black. We've got 3 colors on my screen right now. If I introduce this color here, where do your eyes go? They go to this accent color that doesn't exist anywhere else in this screen. So that's what you've got to think about with the call to action. If you want to draw someone's eye to it, you've got to make it pop. You've got to make it stand out, not just with what it says, but with how it looks too.
Well said. I mean, I think that lesson alone, what could increase conversions, right? I mean, there's so many, we all, whether we're doing web design or a copywriter or whoever we are in life, we're all still looking at other people's websites all the time, whether we're buying something or it's restaurants or this and that. And man, restaurants always have so many issues. Sometimes it's like, where is anything? Where is all I want is your menu right now, or all I want is to know what your hours are. And I don't have any idea how to find these things when I hit your site. But there's so many, but if a lot of this problem could be solved if they just had a very clear call to action or a clear path for you to find those things, and using color to draw the eye is really, really important. One of the things I work with copywriters here and there, and I had this conversation like this past year with a copywriter I've known for many years, but we were working on a sales page, and the discussion around that sales page, it's amazing. When I talk to him, because that's all he's done forever, his thought process around how to guide now this is a sales page. It's like basically a sales letter. It's like, and take somebody through this process of building the urgency and everything around this and getting them to buy something. But I was brought in my designer because he wanted it to be better designed. But my conversation between him, my designer, and myself, and we're all like, his input on it was so specific in that, he's like, basically when somebody hits the page, taking them from the top, the page, the headline, to how do you get them to keep scrolling and keep scrolling and keep scrolling until they hit that buy button. And I thought it was so fascinating because it had to do with not only how we were formatting things, but like what imagery we used, what, the colors we use, how we made certain things pop and draw the eye. And it was just like this technical kind of, it was wild. But I don't, we could talk forever about this stuff, but maybe we could spend an extra few minutes. What other things like on, whether it's a sales page, maybe it's a blog post, maybe it's a product page, maybe it's a services page, which I didn't really get into. That's another thing I wanted to get into too, but maybe part 3. Just kidding. Maybe I'm not. Is that, creating landing pages for specific whatever. But what other things though do you think affect, from a copywriting perspective, affect conversions? And how do you get people to go through that journey besides using color and a strong call to action? What other elements do you use or do you think about?
So I said it right at the very, very beginning, and as you were talking, there's probably lots of things that I think about as you're talking. The thing that pops into my head right now is I'm going to take it back to really understanding the customer. Because if you don't understand the person that's reading the copy that you're writing, again, it could be the most beautifully written copy, the most conversion-oriented copy that would work on so many levels. But if the particular customer that's landing on that page hasn't been aligned to that copy, then the copy won't work. And that's really the stage. The stage you've got to start with before you even put pen to paper is understanding where that customer is at. Think of copywriting as a bridge. So there's a river, and you and your product and your service are on one side of the river, and the customer is on the other side of the river. They can get to that solution by wading through the river. They're going to have some trouble. They may get pulled into the current and have whatever, which means that they're going to come off at the bank and have to make their way back up again. Or we could build them a nice bridge, right? Now, without understanding that your solution is the right solution for them, they currently think that they have to wade through the river. Or if they really are completely confused and lost, then they don't know what to do. They just see blackness. They know where they want to be, but they have absolutely no. To them, it's a cavern. It's just black hole. They can't see what it is, so they're not even going to attempt it because they've got absolutely no idea. So, copywriting is the bridge between the customer where they are now and your solution, and where that solution should be aligned with what that customer wants, what they desire. So, if we can be that bridge, then the copywriting works. But that requires you to align to the customer. And using the analogy that I've used, here's what I mean by aligning to the customer. Say, for example, there are 10 potential crossing points of this river, and the customer can see those 10 potential crossing points. And let's say that they are at crossing point 5. Don't go building your bridge at crossing point 2, because that requires them to move to crossing point 2, which requires you to change the way they think before they even start considering your solution. We should be changing the way they think whilst considering your solution, whilst talking about the problem that they have. And the problem is that crossing point number 2 is most likely a different problem to the crossing point number 5, which is where they are right now. So they're not necessarily ready to go to that crossing point. What we want to do is we want to make it as easy as possible. We are lazy human beings. We just are. We have to admit that. We're really lazy. We don't want to do any work, especially if we're handing our money over to somebody for a product or for a service. We want that to be full service, done for me. There it is. I've paid you. Now I should be getting the results that you're promising. So if that's the case and we're lazy, don't make your customer work for it. And that's what copywriting does, is it meets the client, or meets the lead, prospect, whatever you want to call it, where they're at. So we've got to really get into their head and understand what they're thinking right now. And this is another phrase that you learn when you learn copywriting, is to join the conversation they're having. And what we mean by join the conversation that they're having is that if I'm currently thinking, oh my God, I don't have any leads coming through to my email list. My email list isn't growing. I try to sell my offers to my email list, but no one buys. The people that have bought from my email list are the people that are going to buy. I don't know what else to do. If that's what I'm thinking, if that's the process in my head, don't come to me telling me that social media management is going to be the right solution for me, because they're thinking list, right? So join the conversation with the email list. If you're selling a social media solution, you can still sell the social media solution, but don't go in talking about social media. Go in talking about how difficult it is to grow an email list, when all you're doing is trying to drive traffic to your website through paid ads or organically. Join the conversation saying it's really difficult to build an email list because people don't trust you anymore. They don't just hand over their emails like they used to. But what they do like is social media. This is a really, really basic version, by the way. I'm not saying that this is necessarily how it's going to be. There are many more points to it.
Yeah.
But join the conversation where they're at and then take them on the journey to where you want them to be to understand a potential solution, potentially something they didn't even know was something. And that's what I was talking about earlier, by them not even being, they know they have a problem, but they don't know necessarily that there is a solution to that problem. Remember, I started this particular section by saying, oh my God, I don't know how to grow my email list. They're thinking, how do I grow my email list? Probably with lead magnets, with all these different things. But if your solution through social media can help them grow the email list, then that client is perfect for you. You just don't start with the social media because they're not thinking about social media, they're thinking about email lists. So start talking about that and then draw them to what it is. And that's probably part of the process that you had with that copywriter that you were talking about. How to guide them through this page to get them to take the desired action at the bottom. And it might be that the first thing, I'll share a story with you. One of the first sales pages I ever wrote as a copywriter, a client hired me, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do exactly what my training's done, and I know this is going to work because this is what I've learned, what I've trained. I know this is how it works in sales as well. But I started his sales page talking about absolutely nothing. I don't remember it right now, but absolutely nothing to do with his product, service, or even his industry. And when I delivered it, his feedback to me was, I was so confused when you sent this, I thought you'd sent the wrong document. But by the time I'd got to the bottom, I was ready to buy my own product.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what copywriting does. Because, and it was confusing for him because he doesn't have that problem that I was talking about at the top of the page. He understands his solution, therefore he doesn't have that problem. It wasn't written for him to go through. He went through it because he was checking that, is this even the right document? What has this copywriter sent to me? Right? But his customer, he understood that, yes, my customer is thinking about that. And this guides them so well and so clearly and so smoothly that they don't even realize they're being sold to by the bottom of the page. They just think
That's beautiful.
and feel that there's a solution for them that's going to work.
It's such an art form, isn't it? I think, and going back to, so I got a couple things. So first, going back to that copywriter I was working with. So we were basically designing some templates for sales pages as well, and different types of designs. And it was all based on, like you're talking about, who they were selling to. They knew that they're going to sell to this type of whatever customer or prospect that is going to, this style of landing page is going to resonate with them. But we needed this other style for this other group of people or this other type of list or whatever. And it wasn't just making sure you have the right things in a sales page, your bonuses, your testimonials, and you're taking through this whole journey and like you're talking about. It's also just understanding who is going to see that page and their personality or where they are in the buying cycle or where they're at, like you said. Let's end with this. I just wanted to, as you're talking, I don't know why this jumped in my head, because this has almost nothing to do with sales pages and content and copywriting, but it has to do with sales. And really at the heart of what you're doing, you said you're selling with words. And I have, in fact, I got to watch. I'm good. I have a meeting this afternoon. I had an agency referred to me from another agency, because we do things that this other agency couldn't do for them or whatever. And I'm getting on this call because they're looking for like a full-time developer, web developer. And now I don't know what they all know about us yet. But I know what we offer. I know how we help agencies, right? I know what our solution is for them. But I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to go on this call and I'm going to listen to what their pain point is, what they're trying to solve, what their needs are, knowing that maybe full well, maybe they're looking to hire or maybe they're looking to have an employee of some kind or have some kind of, and then once we start there, I'll start moving them towards the type of things that we do and how I think we can do it better than maybe they were thinking, that type of thing. But I'm starting with the conversation where they're at, right? Like where, what their potential for, well, I might figure that out probably in the first few minutes, like where they're at, and then start there and then move them towards our solution and telling them how we can help them. And I think all the things you've said and what you're talking about here is it seems like that aligns. Like it's the same kind of thing with copy, with a sales page or anything on your website, that you're starting, like you said, where they are, to cross that river, which bridge they're on, and start there and then move them towards your solution. Like, and they won't even know it. They don't even know that they're, they'll just be along for the ride, and suddenly they're like, I need this. I love it.
Yes, exactly.
I love it, Bob. Yeah. It's great. Well, Bob, I have a feeling we will have a part 3 someday. I just know it. We covered because I have conversations with people like this and on all kinds of different topics, and this especially. It's like as we're going, it's like, gosh, I could have really dug deeper into that thing or that thing. But you know what? Somebody listening to this, maybe they want to dig deeper and they don't want to wait for that 3rd episode. They want to just maybe talk to Bob. How can somebody reach out to you, find you? You got a website out there called Copybean, I think, and you hang out on the World Wide Web somewhere. How do people reach out?
I do. You can go to copybean.co.uk. I am also on LinkedIn. I think it's Bob-Taylor-Copybean, but if you just type in Bob Taylor Copybean, it'll come up. But yeah, that's really where I hang out at the moment is on LinkedIn. I am planning on branching out a little bit more. Things are in the process right now. Let's not go into any detail on that sort of stuff. But I will be visible in more places soon-ish. A little teaser for you. You're the first person to hear the teaser. In fact, actually, by the time this episode comes out, something may have surfaced, possibly. So keep your eyes open for that. But yes, find me on LinkedIn. That's a great place to connect. And I can give you a Linktree URL, Matt, to drop in the description if you like, because that takes you everywhere. Everything I have, it's just on one page. You click and go through to whatever you want.
Might have that already. Yeah, if somebody goes to thebuilders.fm, we have bios of everybody. We have your links. Although we'll have to check though. Give me that Linktree link regardless, and if it's not on there already, I'll put it on there. Very cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks again, Bob. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Hey, so we're going to have a bonus segment for just a couple minutes because after we closed down the podcast, Bob said something. What did you just say to me, Bob? That I thought it's very valuable and great. Go ahead.
You mentioned that when you were talking about the customer that you're going to talk to this afternoon, you mentioned that they could be considering potentially hiring in-house or employee or whatever it might be. And you also said before you started talking about that what I'm about to say has got probably nothing to do with sales pages. And what I said to you was actually it has a lot to do with sales pages. Because in that conversation, they might start talking about maybe hiring. And that is exactly what's going through their mind. That's joining the customer where they're thinking. If they're thinking right now of potentially hiring, but your solution is to hire out an agency instead, well then join them where they're thinking about that hiring. Talk about hiring and why hiring an agency is better than hiring in-house or hiring an employee. But by doing that, you're joining them where they're at and they're relating to the conversation. They're hearing you. They're listening because you're not just interrupting their thoughts. What you're doing is joining their thoughts, and they'll appreciate you for that.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that, and that's why I wanted to add the extra couple minutes here. Wanted to add to that, like when you said that, I'm like, oh, and if we really connect this to actual content, this would be a perfect landing page for me to create, right? Like I could I do this already for different reasons, but this is another thing where I could create even a blog post about hiring. And that starts with hiring and talks about, maybe, how to do that. But it leads into one, or you could think about maybe hiring an agency, or this is the better, getting a dedicated resource from an agency, doing that type of thing. And suddenly, we've done exactly what we're talking about here and what you've talked about in this episode. So I just wanted to bring you back and just,
and with that idea as well, you could compare cost, because they could be thinking cost. They might not necessarily be thinking about the hiring cost. So you could find out the average they're going to have to train. That's onboarding before they even get this person to start working. So there's a training process. There's probably some sort of probation process. There's all sorts of other processes involved in hiring that you can completely chop out with just hiring a marketing agency.
Right.
So all those things that
That's
they
right.
can, there's lots of different avenues that you could take of what they could potentially be thinking, that you can change the way they're thinking, because actually, maybe hiring isn't the right idea because there's a $5,000 cost up front just for the training process. We're going to pay him for 3 months to do nothing whilst we're training him, or whatever it might be. So it's good to think that way, and I'm so happy that it got you inspired to think about joining the customer where they're thinking, because that's exactly what it is. So I'm grateful that you actually just brought an example in, because people listening can actually see that example live that just occurred and how they can apply it to their own business and their own services.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if you see a landing page from me out there regarding this, why?
or like I said, post.
Or a blog post. Like I said, we're going to cut to the chase. We'll take care of a lot of things. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. We'll handle it, blah, blah, blah. Very good. Okay, I'm going to cut out again. Bye, Bob. Thanks for jumping back on with me. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.